Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our Microsoft XDR webinar. Today, our presenter is Derek Farrell. Derek is a solutions architect in our cybersecurity practice. He specializes in Microsoft security, where he works with security architecture, optimization, and customer initiatives across Defender and XDR. Before we move it over to Derek, just want to give you a few housekeeping items. So we have the chat and the mic's turned off. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you can put those in the Q&A and we will review them at the end, and Derek will answer whatever he can for you. And then the second is we are recording this. So as soon as we have the recording done, we will do a follow-up and get that out to everybody on the registration list, as well as the winner of the Amazon gift card. So I think that is everything. And I'm going to switch it over to Derek.
Okay, thank you, Anise. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking time out today. Today, we're going to be talking about the Microsoft Defender XDR. We're going to discuss that a little bit. We're going to discuss some of the features, functionality, talk a little bit deeper on some points, and then we're going to walk through how Defender XDR handles a situation or two. Should be pretty informative stuff, hopefully. And again, if you have any questions towards the end, I'd be happy to answer. So let's dive right on in. All right. Okay. So let me move forward here. All right. So talking about the Microsoft Defender XDR. So what is the Microsoft Defender XDR? I know you hear the term XDR. So that's extended detection and response. So this is what Microsoft has with learning machine AI behind it. It's very powerful in terms of automation that it can handle on its own, in terms of investigation, response, summary of incidents. It's pretty incredible what it can do. And later on, you'll get a little snippet of something from Security Copilot that augments this even more, in my opinion. And you'll get a nice little brief look at that. So the key here for Defender XDR is stronger together. That's going to kind of be the theme of our discussion is, yes, the XDR pieces of it, like Defender for Endpoint, are very good. Defender for Office 365 offers very good mail protection. But is it enough these days? Is it enough to just have one or two things protected? In my opinion, no. And that's where the Microsoft XDR shines. Once you bring this product together, the more pieces you add of this product, the stronger it gets together. Because of the way that the AI interacts, the way that the integrations are natively inherent to Microsoft, very easy to integrate these products once you onboard them. And they automatically start talking to each other, sharing telemetry. And it's worth calling out that there's some newer features, and now identity is starting to sneak into the XDR a bit more. Identity signaling is now sent to Defender for Endpoint and Defender for Office 365 as some pre-authorization authentication to make sure that the person authenticating is who they say they are. They're not coming from a risky IP or a known attack, or they're not potentially breached. So more on that in a bit, but really exciting stuff. A lot of automation and KQL. If you're like me and you're marginally a fan of SQL, or if you've had experience with SQL in the past, there is KQL language. That's Cousteau, like Jacques Cousteau, that Cousteau, query language, and it is a sister language to SQL. So if you're familiar with SQL, KQL is not too far away. You end up writing select queries, things like that, to get the information that you're after, and that all uses API graph. All right, so let's dive a little bit further in, shall we? All right, defense and layers. So I just talked about, is it safe or is it recommended to just defend one piece of it? Yeah, you could have a really good defensive position on email, but the rest of your house has all the windows open in terms of what you might be securing. So you've got this really awesome front gate, but the walls are made out of cardboard. So think of it in those terms. That's how the attacker is going to be thinking about things. The attacker is going to be thinking, how do I get in? Once I'm in, where do I go? What can I get my hands on? And what can I exfiltrate? So those are going to be some common factors. And the reason why we want to have defense and layer through the XDR is because of its redundancy, its resiliency, its scalability. We don't want the attackers to be able to get past our defensive layers. What good is it having one layer up front protecting everything if the defender can walk by that entire defense? Whereas we've kind of got a secondary here. If we're going to use football terms, we've got a secondary. We've got more than one guy in the secondary. So if the first guy misses the tackle, there might be two or three more guys there to help make that tackle. So you think of it in terms like that, defensive layers. We want to layer identity. We want to layer on email protection. We want to layer endpoint protection. We want to layer things like cloud app protection with a product like Defender for Cloud Apps, if possible. Those are all primary components of the XDR. Those are all pieces that are going to do their part in terms of keeping those layers secure, keeping layers intact, and also communicating with each other. So if Defender for Office 365 would miss a malicious email, what would happen? And we're going to look at that later. We're going to look at how the XDR would actually handle a multi-attack, multi-layered defense in terms of what my demo is going to have today. So really exciting. All right, moving on. So Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, let's talk about a few things that it can do. So primarily, we'll assume that this is going to be Defender for Endpoint Plan 2, which is their highest plan. There's also Defender for Business, which comes with with Microsoft Business Premium. The big difference is going to be some automation pieces are going to be missing from Defender for Business. However, I do want to make mention that if you are on Defender for Business and you're on Business Premium, there is a security add-on for you to be able to bring your Defender for Endpoint, your Defender for Office 365, your Entra, all those up to P2 to have that enterprise grade protection at the Business Premium level. So that is really awesome to know and hear, and that gives you the same scalability options as Enterprise. So really, it was really good for Microsoft to push that down into the business tier because the security defaults, in my opinion, are never enough. Yes, Microsoft wants you to turn them on. Yes, Microsoft wants you to do that as part of best practice. But is it really enough anymore? In my opinion, no, because attackers are learning how to skirt these things. They're learning how to get past some of these defenses. And that's why I think Microsoft is ahead in the field, really, because of things like its 0-hour purge capabilities, its threat signaling. And I want to make mention of this. The threat signaling for your virus definitions, malicious emails, anything of that nature, that is all coming from threat signaling that's updated in real time. And all of that threat signaling comes from every Azure tenant, commercial tenant, and Gov tenant. They share the same backbone. GCC is on it, and DoD, Department of Defense, are on a separate backbone. But you're getting all that risk signaling and threat signaling from all of those other tenants on the planet. I don't think I know any other security service that has a 0-day database or library quite like that. So let's give an example, a quick example. If there's a file that's let in via attachment, and that attachment doesn't look malicious at first, Defender is still continuously scanning these things. So if it came in via email, it's still getting scanned. The disposition of that file could be changed. It could be seen as 0-day malware, and it will be zapped, which is the 0-hour auto purge, and it gets removed and moved into quarantine. So once things occur, once transactions occur, once you take actions on the endpoint, once you take actions with your email, once you take actions with apps, that's where a lot of the other defenses that are out there are they stop at the front door. They don't come in with you. Defender kind of watches you. It stays with you. It looks for anomalous type behavior with the AI. So it looks for impossible travel. It'll look at things like from the endpoint on mass data exfiltration. It can see those types of events and say, hey, you know what? That person doesn't do that every day. That's kind of out of character for them. What are we going to do about that? Let's start watching. Let's start taking a look at what kind of habits are being developed on the endpoints, what their browsing history is, because don't forget, things like Defender for Endpoint also have web content filtering tied to them. So that means if you're using Defender for Endpoint in active mode, that means that you can layer on a protection of network or web content filtering. And the way that works, and I'll give you an explanation at the high level, Smart Screen handles everything for Edge. That is your component that is handling web content filtering from Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Third-party browsers such as Opera, Brave, Chrome, and Firefox are also covered if you didn't know that. And those components are covered by the network protection setting from your antivirus profile. So same thing, almost the same experience, but in order to get those third-party browsers protected, you do have to have Defender antivirus in active mode, and your EDR has to be in active mode, which means no third-party antivirus can be present. So actually, there was a question. I'll address that right now. So Sean Mack asked, in terms of browsing history, other than Defender timeline, what can you do to review browsing history? So the way that that works, you can't really review browsing history per se, like you would be looking at it in your browser. There is reporting that will show you categorically what sites have been visited, how they're categorized. Now, those categories are subjective. Microsoft sets those. However, you do have the ability to override. If it is something that's business critical and Microsoft is blocking it, you do have the ability to create what's called an indicator. That indicator will allow you to access that site. So you can write them in an allow or block context, and then that's your workaround. And then on top of that, you can talk to Microsoft and dispute that category. So if it's something that's clearly, like if you're standing up a new infrastructure website, something like that, and it says that it's a gambling domain and clearly it's wrong, then it's wrong. Then you can dispute that. Microsoft will correct that disposition, and anytime that site gets scanned, it will be correct. So there's a little bit of tuning that you may need to do with web content filtering categorically. You can't actually control the categories yourself, but you can manipulate certain things that allow you access and dispute that. Hope that answers your question. All right, so moving on. So there's a few things about Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and moving on. There is vulnerability management. I do not know if people are familiar with vulnerability management, but what you get as part of Defender for Endpoint is called core vulnerability management. That brings you all the information after you onboard. It brings you information like what patches you're missing. Application vulnerabilities are the big ones. That's probably what's going to impact your devices the most. Things like Adobe, things like Google browsers, Google Chrome, Firefox, are they up to date? Are they patched for vulnerabilities? If the answer is no, what's going to happen is you're going to get information on that, and your endpoints are going to be graded from low to high risk. So the risk is calculated by a combination of vulnerabilities and exposure. So the difference is vulnerabilities, those are obviously exploits that people can take advantage of. Exposure means how exposed is your device to potential attackers? How exposed is it in terms of defenses? Do you have everything set up? That all comes from exposure management within security. And again, it's a combination of secure scores. So when you're looking at your endpoints, they're graded on a scale of low to high. High means that it's a high, and critical actually means that machine needs attention right away because it's at risk for being compromised potentially at the device level. There's too many vulnerabilities, there's too many weaknesses. And just to kind of give you an idea, you can tie this back into your Intune compliance policies and back to your conditional access. So it acts as a layer. So once you have Defender onboarded, you could say if the device is high, classified as a high or more, block access to that until it's remediated. So there's actions you can take to keep these non-compliant devices out of your environment. But honestly, if you keep your machines patched, because some of the patching for Defender comes from Windows updates, some of it comes on its own through its own channels. As long as you're keeping things up to date, your antivirus engine, your Windows security patches and monthly patches, then you should be in relatively good shape to adopt this solution, and without a lot of harm and noise. And harm and noise, what I mean by that is your endpoints aren't in very good shape, you're having onboarding issues, Defender fails to onboard because you're missing patches, too many patches. So if you're missing months and months of patches, you run the risk of not being able to onboard because it's just too outdated. And Microsoft will tell you when that happens. So just a few things to be aware of if you're considering adopting. It's worth looking at your endpoints ahead of time, just making sure that everything's up to date, everything's patched before you start that kind of engagement. And then I think that your chances and your odds are much, much better. We're going to talk about some more Defender products. So that was Defender for Endpoint at a high level view. So now we're going to look at Defender for Office 365. So this is an email component. This one's been more popular over the years. This used to be called ATP, for anybody who remembers. It used to be called Advanced Threat Protection. They changed the name. Microsoft's notorious for changing names and then changing names back. So this is the name of it today. No, just kidding. It's Microsoft Defender for 365. Now, in terms of email protection, this is the primary product that has that 0-hour purge that I was telling you about. So emails can slip through the cracks. I don't know of one email gateway that will potentially block 100% of threats. That's just not going to happen with the 0-day stuff. But again, the big glaring difference between them is Microsoft Defender for 365 continues to monitor, continues to check disposition, continues to check files and hyperlinks to see if they've been weaponized against your organization since delivery, and will remove it if it changes the disposition. And I think that's pretty powerful. And that also allows the admin or whoever's working the incidents, if there is a multi-staged incident with email and it has gone out to multiple people, you're going to see where it went. You're going to see who interacted with it, who shared it, where it went from there, who clicked on it, any potential links. And that's going to give you an idea of what you need to do to resolve things. Now, take into account, if you have more advanced Microsoft features like user risk and sign-in risk, there's some automation that Defender can take on your behalf to make your users do a self-service password reset. I know that some people are on the fence and they're potentially using third parties for self-service password reset. Just to kind of give you an idea, the Entra self-service password reset kind of becomes important later down the road. If you're going to use the automation, it's one of its strongest identity responses is to force a password reset. Not only does it do that, it breaks all the authentication sessions for that user. So it'll revoke any access tokens or authorized authentication tokens, pull them away, essentially make the user sign out of everything and then reset their password, and multi-factor is a part of that every step of the way. So you make sure that your users are safe for the first and foremost. And then also we're going to see an example later where a combination of this is going to happen. So we're going to get a malicious email in our example later. Multiple people are going to get compromised, unfortunately. And then Defender for Endpoint is going to be there. Defender for Office 365 are going to be there. And I'm going to show you how it's going to handle it. I'm going to show you the level of detail that it gives you as well. So that's pretty exciting. You can get a lot of forensic information on these attacks, more than a lot of other products out there. And I want to add that if you're looking to use Security Copilot in the future, Security Copilot's pretty awesome when it comes to this. If you have an incident that you bring up and you're using Security Copilot, it pops out on a side blade and it starts to summarize that incident for you immediately. Then it starts to ask you, do you want to reset their password? Do you want to disable the account? I've already disabled and isolated the machine for you. Would you like me to do this? It's really awesome on how fast it brings you this stuff. Because think about it, if you didn't have an operational run book, or it's something that's spur of the moment, because attackers don't wait. They don't wait for us to be ready. I think it really helps generate. It doesn't necessarily generate its own run books. According to Microsoft, they're probably about 3 or 4 years off from AI being able to write its own run books, which is pretty scary. Right now, we still have to be responsible for any kind of run books that we have in terms of remediation, because again, this is going to have full remediation capabilities, but there are going to be times where it's not going to, like giving you an example, if it isolates a device within Defender for Endpoint, it doesn't automatically unisolate that device for a reason. It doesn't let it out of the bag until an analyst has looked at it, done diligence, run scans on it, and made sure that that machine is 100% clear. just to give you some idea of some of the built-in. So it's built in that way, so AI doesn't have, and the system doesn't have 100% control all the time. There's still, and of course, if you veto any of the decisions the system makes, it's going to listen to the user over that. All right. The last piece of this that I'm going to show off today, and this is going to kind of be briefer towards the end, is Defender for Cloud Apps. I talk about this product a lot, or try to at least, because it's one of my favorite products. And Defender for Cloud Apps is application protection. So if you're already using something like mobile application management from Intune, you can use something within Defender for Cloud Apps called Edge for Business. And that forces all of your sessions for your cloud apps into Edge, if possible. And this tool also allows you to monitor user behavior on applications. So you can monitor applications via conditional access. And this stacks on top of conditional access. You can actually layer on additional controls onto your conditional access. So an example that I'll show you later is I was bad in one of my practice tenants or test tenants. I attempted to exfiltrate personal information using Firefox from an unmanaged machine, and I generated alerts. I'll show those alerts to you later. I'll show you what it did, and I'll show you how it responded. And Cloud Apps doesn't necessarily care. You can make it care about the devices. You can say whether it's an Intune managed machine, compliant machine, or not. So it gives you flexibility. So if you do have BYOD in your environment as far as endpoints go, and you need that flexibility, or you have certain users that need web access and you just simply can't say no to that, this gives you an alternative to police unmanaged devices at an app level with conditional access, and then also tie in with Purview and make sure that somebody is not exfiltrating social security numbers, financial data, things of that nature. So um, I would look at it this way. Defender for Office 365 guards the front gate. Defender for Endpoint guards the city within the gate. And then Defender for Cloud Apps is the street level hero who is handling all the security for each individual building. So in terms of talking at scale, we got 3 different levels that attackers potentially have to get past. So part of this is the really awesome part is with Defender for Cloud Apps, you're going to be getting telemetry from Defender for Endpoint. So all those machines that are enrolled in Defender for Endpoint are sending continuous data on app discovery. So this is another way to find shadow IT. So if there's applications, generative AI, things like that you want to keep out of your environment, and you want to block off, or if you have enterprise licensing for like ChatGPT, Copilot, any of those, you can actually look to protect those with Defender for Cloud Apps. Some of them may support direct integration. It varies on application. But I do have to call out that if you're going to use the conditional access solution that I've been speaking about, the applications do have to integrate with Entra ID, and they do have to support SAML SSO at a minimum. Has to happen, or you can't get it into conditional access. If you can't do an app reg with SSO, then it won't work, unfortunately. So that is one important thing that I should call out in terms of this product. But fantastic product, lets you do a lot, adds a lot of response capabilities to you. This is another tool that uses the self-service password reset. If somebody gets compromised, and it's considered, the term for it is confirmed user compromised. That designates a high risk within Entra. High risk is defined as 85% probability that their password has been lifted, and it's not them. So based on Microsoft Zero Trust, we always assume breach. When that happens, then you're going to see the automation behind the password resets. We can actually suspend access to all the applications or outright disable the account in Entra if we want to go really hardcore with it. So there's some automated options that are available to you. All right. I know that was a lot to digest. I appreciate you listening and hanging in there. I'd like to show some of this demo now in terms of Defender for Endpoint and Defender for 365, and then zip into Cloud Apps. So hang on, here we go. I'm going to share my other screen now for you guys and girls. Okay, now this should look familiar to everybody. And can everybody see this okay? I'm assuming that's a yes. Joey, you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
I think we're good, Derek. I think you just hand up instead of react, so we're good.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, all right, we're gonna move on then. And again, any questions you have, ask in the Q&A, I'll be happy to answer. So here we go. Defender for Endpoint and Office 365. So we start in progress. So the incident has already occurred. And let me here, and I'll be ready. Okay, we're starting in our Defender portal. This is where your team's going to respond to threats. As I said before, remember, not everything's going to be completely automated. There may be incidents that you work where automation has occurred, but there's still going to be some due diligence on the end of the analyst or the admin working the actual alert or the SOC. This would apply to SOC as well. And I can't stress enough that I feel like Security Copilot's going to be crucial for any SOC in the future because of time, SLAs, and turnaround time to resolve is so much quicker. It's just so much quicker than a human can act. I hate to say it, but that's where we're heading, and it's pretty impressive. Do I think it will take over positions like SOC and other positions, admin positions right away? No. I see it as more of an augmentation tool than anything. It's not it still has a certain set of parameters and a certain level of intelligence through the agents that it has to follow. So I'm not really concerned about that yet. You still need it. All right. So underway. Let's take a look at what incident has popped. So in this example, we have a lot of stuff going on here. So there was a hands-on keyboard attack that was launched. And there's a couple different things that happened during this attack, and it led to compromised accounts, unfortunately. It ended up being a multi-stage attack where the user that was compromised ended up didn't have MFA on. I just want to call that out. In this scenario, did not have MFA on whatsoever. And I want to call this little piece out that I promised earlier. This is Security Copilot on this right-hand blade. This is Security Copilot working out and giving me a summary on the incident and asking me what actions I would like to take. And some of the really cool things that I've seen it do so far. Let's say, for example, you want to contact this user in Teams. This is really fancy to the point where it opens a Microsoft Teams message for you and it types a really nice, like soft, like, hey, we see you're having some problems with your machine and we'd like to look at this, blah, blah, blah. It does that all for you. That's just crazy to me. So it saves you the time savings on even just minuscule things like that. I think are going to pay off in the end because it gives you more time. Like you don't have to worry about what am I going to say now. You don't have to worry about okay, is the incident classified correctly? A lot of this is going to be handled, which leaves you to actually focus on the real problem at hand. So all the logistical stuff is kind of out of your way, and that's very nice about it. And that's what I think I like the most about it. Okay, so there was, I just wanted to show this real quick. You'll see a little bit more of the Security Copilot stuff later in another example. All right, so we've got a lot of alerts here for this. Attack disruption was successful. And remember, I talked about that concept earlier, attack disruption. The key to this is we have multiple layers here. We have the user's endpoint right here, which is in V Novato, which is in the center. Then you have one of the compromised user accounts. You can see where it says isolated in red underneath the endpoint, and you can see where it says disabled under the user account. Those are the countermeasures that Defender was able to take against these accounts and against this endpoint to prevent further spread. So if this was a ransomware attack, a potential ransomware attack, it stopped here. So this machine has been isolated. So this is patient zero in terms of infection. And this is also in terms of endpoint. And then this is patient zero in terms of this is the user account that attempted to run PowerShell. This is the user account that attempted to exfiltrate data later on. So there's a part of this incident that we're going to cover where this compromised account attempted to email sensitive data out. And that is when the integration with Defender for Cloud Apps and Purview kind of stepped on it and said, not today. So we're going to see that here in just a minute. All right. So a little deeper look just to show you how much deeper you can get. And again, this attack story that we're looking at here, this all happened on one machine. So Defender was tracking this attack in real time as it was happening, and it was like a chess game. So attacker makes a move, defender makes a move, attacker makes a move, defender makes a move. And that's why you want to have layered defenses, because what if you were missing a layer? What would happen? Would this attacker be successful? Would they now be into your infrastructure? Potentially. So knowing that we stopped it here and knowing how we stopped it here with full forensics really gives us, makes us feel better about things too. All right, so if I want to see the device details, this is actually going to snap out into Defender for Endpoint. And when we're looking at the machine, we notice that the machine itself didn't miss. So Defender, the vector for this was an email attack. So Microsoft Defender for Endpoint still on standby. It lets Defender for Office 365 attempt to rectify. If it slips, then Defender for Endpoint is integrated, and Defender for 365 saying, it got past me. Defender for Endpoint, heads up, it's coming your way. And Defender for Endpoint's already ready for it. You can also see we've got Defender for Identity here in the mix. We saw some suspicious DNS activity happen from this account. What was occurring here was the attacker was trying to set up a newly parked domain. They had parked a new domain for attack. They were going to use this domain as a dumping ground to exfiltrate data and dump it out into whatever junk domain they decided to come up with. And that is what this user is attempting to do. Now it's looking from a DNS. Now it's looking at this network destination. So it doesn't really know anything about this domain. And the way that this works is it still has, Microsoft AI is cognizant aware and aware enough to know that it is a newly registered domain, or if that domain has been used in previous attacks, it's going to know. And it can adjust itself. So Defender for Cloud Apps in this example would see potential IP addresses that are being connected to for this domain, and Defender for Cloud Apps is going to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and put some tags on that show that these are malicious IP addresses. These won't ever be contacting us again unless you say so. So it can automatically flag and tag IP addresses like that were used in attacks as known bad IP addresses to keep them out. And that'll block them from an endpoint level, a cloud app level, and potentially the identity authentication level too. So there's a combination of things going on. So this person, whenever this happened, the attacker was also running PowerShell to try to get user information. They were most likely looking for somebody who had potential admin account they could make a vertical move to, they could socially engineer somehow, that now that they've got a foothold, that they think they have a foothold. And what's funny about this, I'll explain this a little bit further as we go along. This attacker may be still trying to execute this attack, and Defender is recording this. But what do you think is happening right now? Because we noticed earlier that attack disruption is in place. This is a critical asset, which means that this is either a VIP, or this is a machine or a server. Most likely this is an endpoint that has access to critical infrastructure data. So it's tagged as a critical asset. So the AI sees that tag and it says, this is a potential important person or somebody who can do damage. I'm going to take extra care on this one. Here's what we can do. When it starts looking at this, it put it into isolation first and foremost. When this machine goes into isolation, the the attacker still thinks they're connected to the internet, when in reality, they're now inside a bubble, inside Azure, that is like a prison for them. So they are now in a VPN connection in Azure in jail, directly connected with Defender XDR and Defender for Endpoint. That means that you can run advanced hunting against this machine and gain intel. And the longer this attacker stays connected to this machine, the more the AI profiles them and finds out more about them, their attack patterns, their behaviors, everything like that. So if they try again in the future, or one of their buddies tries, and it has a similar pattern, it's shut down right away. So it's learning everything that's happening here in addition to responding to it. So it's learning these patterns. It's learning how to take care of this the next time, how to be faster, how to be better. And you can see that there were two exposed accounts. One of the accounts ran some remote execution on PowerShell, tried to get some additional information about users. And you can see one of the accounts that was exposed. What do you see right here? This to me is a no-no these days, a big no-no. MFA disabled these days is like an invitation or a kick me sign on your back for people to just come on in and do what they want. If you don't have MFA on everything by now, I strongly, strongly urge that you do, because identity is the first thing they're going after. They're going to use phishing campaigns. They're going to use social engineering. They're going to come after that identity. And then once they're in past the identity, it's really going to be dependent on what other layers of the XDR or what other defenses you have in the way. And that's going to matter. That's going to matter the most. And time is what these people need. With attack disruption, it does just that. It disrupts their timetable. So they get past one layer, they're like, oh, I'm in like Flynn, this is going to be easy. Nope, here comes Defender for Endpoint, smacks it down, they're dead in their tracks. It's over at that point. So that's why you want to have checkpoints, you want to have layers, and you want to think about this in those terms, and not just one unified defensive front. More of, hey, how can I defend different layers of this to stop the attacker from getting through all of my doors. All right. Moving on. You can see here, look exactly what the attacker tried to get. They went right after the HR data. They went after social security numbers, they went after addresses, they went after PII, so they could potentially either reuse it against you to social engineer you or sell it. How many people are tired of getting letters in the mail that your data has been breached by a company? I know I've gotten a lot of them this year. Um, I feel that it is a responsibility, as myself, I work for all lines. It's a responsibility for us in security that work for companies to take this as seriously as possible, because time equals money, money equals livelihood. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen here. Unfortunately, if you are, if you're the sort of company, and let's say you're a smaller company, can you survive a ransomware situation? Do you have ransomware insurance? Like, these are things that, and I think a lot of the ransomware insurance places that are out there, like your Travelers and your big carriers, want this kind of stuff in place by default, or they're not going to cover you. They want something. They want some assurance that if they're going to have to pay out a ransom, that you tried your darn best to stop it from happening. So I feel like your odds are better with Defender products, only because look at how it's looking at the situation. It's just not looking at, oh, somebody opened a file on an endpoint, it's an antivirus, they got it. It's looking much deeper than that. It's tearing this thing apart, and it's trying to figure out how to stop it again from multiple angles. So I really don't know. I know there's other comparable XDRs out there, but does it really have the AI and the integration that Microsoft has? And my answer is, I haven't really seen something that's super comparable yet, only because the AI is part of the system too in this case. So you've got Microsoft Copilot, also part of it. All right. So look at all this HR data. This was all potential record. These were security numbers. These were social security numbers for people being sent from this email account. What ended up stopping it was Purview. And you can see Purview with Insider Risk Management, which is an add-on to Purview Premium. It is a program that if somebody triggers audit logs and they do a mass exfiltration event, or they start doing anomalous behavior based on this, Insider Risk Management starts recording that user for up to 90 days, and it looks 180 days backwards at their history to see, has this person been here for a while doing this, or what's going on? And based on these defensive evasion alerts, a few things happen. The user may lose access to files, and the you notice the risk score goes up every time one of these happens. That risk score is like a credit score. So what do you think is going to happen if this continues? That user score is going to hit high. And if you have the self-service password reset on, it's going to make them reset the password, and it's going to kick that attacker out. So again, there's many, many layers here that can trigger these responses. This is just a few of them. So with the device, we noticed that the device here we have a lot of options here. So the device is isolated right now. That means it's only connected to Azure. We can run our scans. We can collect logs from Defender. We can restrict further app execution. So if we hit this, that means that not only can they not authenticate, they can't execute any applications at all while we have this on. We can have the AI take another look. Live response, this is PowerShell against the machines on the back end. So you can run PowerShell, advanced hunting, and you wouldn't release this from isolation. Notice it didn't release it, even though it's resolved a lot of this issue. It's resolved everything. It stopped the exfiltration of data. It stopped the user accounts. It stopped the attack on the endpoints, and it's isolated. Next things left would be, yes, we're going to make sure that that user's password is reset. We're going to make sure that the full scan is run on that machine. And we're going to do diligence. And if everything comes back clean at that point and all the users are reset and we're satisfied, then that is the end of our demo. So really, you saw there was a lot of information to digest, but there was not a ton of user interaction that had to be made in terms of the remediation. How does it detect Windows Firewall? So Windows Firewall policy is part of your endpoint security. There are going to be reports on Windows Firewall, health of the firewall, and deployment of the firewall. The only thing that I caution you on and being careful about is make sure that you do not roll anything out from Intune that has firewall protection in it while you're using group policy to do the same thing, or SCCM if you're doing the same thing. And make sure that you don't cause yourselves any loops. Nothing in there is tattooable, so you can lay those down and pull them back. That's all going to get pulled into the XDR's consideration, so the firewall defenses will get pulled in there. If somebody was attempting to attack on the firewall, then you would have seen alerts that were specific to firewall. And that is all encompassed in part of the XDR. So that's being monitored as well. We have all those policies. Ideally, we're going to want to roll this out from Microsoft Intune. And from there, you're going to have persistent settings. You're not going to have line of sight problems anymore. Isolation. So isolation. No, it's not the firewall is not a requirement. That is something the Defender will do on its own. It just cuts off the ability for users to authenticate against servers, endpoints, domain controllers, and just keeps them trapped right there in that Windows session. That's how it works at a high level. So no, firewall is not going to be required. This is just a function. So it's a really cool function. So, and the attacker has no idea. There's also, I should call out on the background, there's also a honeypot feature on the plan too. It's called Deception that's built in. It's a mixture of real names and real machine names, and they're lures that are planted on the machine, and it's an early detection system. So if one of those triggers is trapped, Defender's like, I see him coming. They tripped one of the tripwires. This ought to be fun. Then it starts recording them and making sure that if it does have to isolate the machine, it does that. But the attacker has no idea that this stuff is going on their end. I mean, I'm sure they do to a degree, but they don't know that they're trapped in the matrix. So, for the better lack of words. The last part I wanted to show really quick is Defender for Cloud Apps. I wanted to show just an example, and this is, again, something that's in progress. I wanted to show you what this would do from an unmanaged device from an alert standpoint if you were trying to exfiltrate sensitive data from an unmanaged machine. So you can see I was really bad here. This is one incident. This is how many times I tried. Uh, Defender for Cloud Apps reached into Purview, saw that I was trying to take social security numbers, I was trying to take credit card numbers, I was trying to take full names. So I was trying to simulate taking an entire user record. And every time I went to copy and paste, it would tell me no in Firefox because of my Defender for Cloud Apps. Now it came in here and it made an incident because it said, hey, Derek doesn't normally do that. We thought this was awfully suspicious that he's all of a sudden trying to exfiltrate all of this sensitive data, and he's trying to email it to a Gmail. Why would he be trying to send personal data to this IP address over email? So it knew on its own, based on the parameters I gave it, it knew to stop the sensitive data, but it also looked at the anomalous behavior of my account, saying that's out of character for him. That's out of character for Derek. Let's take care of that. If this is a false positive, then we can tell this system, hey, stand down. Whenever we resolve this incident or we go back, we can change the disposition and say, hey, this was a false positive, or hey, this was that, or this IP address. Hey, what if that's a valid IP address? What if that's one of my locations? Then you can actually add this in as an indicator to say, hey, this is a friendly IP. Don't look at it that way. So when this happens in the future, now the IP part of it is not suspicious. Just Derek exfiltrating all this data is suspicious unless I'm allowed to have access to it. So in terms of like what this looks like fully set up, this is the kind of throughput that you get. So if it isn't triggered at the endpoint level or the email level, you're seeing that I'm interacting with Office. I was interacting with Outlook, the installed app on my machine. It picked it up from, you see that it was performed by the XDR. It sent Defender for Cloud Apps first. It said, Defender for Cloud Apps, you're best suited for this. You're up first. Sends him in. Defender for Cloud Apps fails. It falls back to Defender for Endpoint, saying, hey, I'm looking for DLP data. And a call out that I want to make as well is if you're using Defender for Endpoint active mode, that makes you eligible for Endpoint DLP because they're the same onboarding package. But you have to be in active mode. If you're using a third party, you can still get telemetry and information, but all of your blocking capabilities are gone. So I want to wrap up in saying that I appreciate everybody taking the time for this today. I know that a lot of information here. There's a lot of information here. If you'd like to continue any of these conversations, I'd be happy to. Reach out to your reps. We can set up a call. We can talk more. We can talk about how this might fit into your environment and talk about maybe some of the offerings that we have around these deployments and these features. So I'm going to go ahead and leave some more time for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up.
Derek, we did have one. What is the minimum Microsoft licensing you need to have to run XDR? We have E1s for a number of our users.
Okay, so I'm going to address this. What I recommend is, and I know from a cost perspective, the world's not perfect, things aren't perfect, budgets aren't perfect. However, my opinion, every user should have the same level of defense. At a minimum, to get the Defender for 365 and Defender for Endpoint options, and you're on an E1 right now, if you're an enterprise, then I recommend entertaining either an E3 with the security add-on for every user, or if you're in business premium, the premium add-on with a security add-on for users. And that security add-on gives you Defender for Cloud Apps, Defender for Endpoint P2, Defender for Office 365 P2, Defender for Identity, and Entra P2 for rough estimate for like around $10. I mean, all the other add-ins like Entra P2 is like closer to $12. Why would you pay 12 for that add-in when you can get a whole slew of security products for a good price? So in my opinion, the ROI on it is worth it. Yes, you're paying more upfront. Yes, you have to upgrade your licensing, but does it cost you man hours and company hours and revenue recovering from an attack later on? That's what you have to weigh. Also, if you're looking at getting rid of any third-party products and consolidation, now's the time. That cost would offset. If you're looking at bundling into a Microsoft licensing and the combination I just gave you, then you don't need a ton of third-party protection to cover those gaps and cover those layers that I was talking about. You could have an all-inclusive full XDR deployment that integrates and talks to each other and is scalable for AI in the future. Uh, I think that's the way to go because the less of this you have, and you're going to do something like Security Copilot, the less you have of the XDR, the less effective it's going to be, in my opinion. If you have a complete Microsoft XDR and you're looking at scaling that way, you have complete protection and you're in a good position to scale AI, create new agents, deploy agents. There's actually some cool agents that are already out there. There's a phishing triage agent that Copilot will work phishing reports for you automatically. So we're getting there. So I think that those are things that we definitely need to look towards as we're building this stuff, in my opinion.
We had a
Any
couple.
any more?
Yeah, there are a couple more. Could you talk some about using Defender for Cloud apps to block access from unmanaged devices? Is there a way to set up those rules in audit, like CA policies, have report only mode?
Yes, 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 and yes. And you have to do it from both sides too. You have to do the conditional access has to be in report only, and the cloud app policy that you write has to be an audit. So there is an audit option. So you can look at your authentication logs and see what's going to happen. And a little bit more on Defender for Cloud Apps, it's a reverse proxy tunnel. So what ends up happening at a high level is user makes first level authentication from Entra. After that first level authentication, it goes through the reverse proxy tunnel. It then satisfies the second claim after it adds on your conditional access rules and everything that you're going to add from cloud apps that brings it back and completes the second authentication and those sessions get applied. So at a high level, that's how it works.
Question about the recording. Yes, we will be sending out the link to the recording as well as the winner of the Amazon gift card. Then another one, in order for cloud apps to work, like in your example, blocking clipboard, does that only work with Entra SSO registered applications?
So that's a great question. The answer to that is yes. The answer to that is yes. The example that I used, your Microsoft 365 apps and your Azure apps, like your Azure portal, your Azure admin portals, those are already SSO'd. So really, you just have to connect those. The concern that you have to look at in connecting third-party apps to make sure that you have the right licensing for the third-party app are things like Google Workspace, Salesforce, Slack. There's an entire list out there that I can provide that I'll make sure the group gets it. You have to do some diligence on it to make sure you have the right level of licensing for that product. Example, ChatGPT needs the enterprise license to be able to touch the API for Defender for Cloud Apps and protect it. If you don't have enterprise licensing and you can SSO an app, let's say we'll use Dropbox or Box, for example. Those are others that you need licensing for as well. However, because they support SAML, you can still put those into conditional access and control those because they support SAML, and you can still apply those conditions. So really, it's about the app supporting SAML for the conditional access part. And then the licensing, there's two different things here. There's the conditional access that you connect to, and you can connect the app via API. And each app is different, but you can scan for anomalous behavior based on the app support. And that's where you need the licensing to connect it directly via API. So yeah, if you want to definitely have more talks about that, if you have app examples that we could talk about, yeah, we could vet those out and see if they're compatible and see what your pathway is forward into cloud apps for sure. We could definitely do that. It's all about assessing those apps up front before you kind of run too far ahead of yourself.
Okay, then there's one. Do you know if there are any plans to have the ability to remediate detected CVE items, say if you were using Intune to manage the system?
Great question too. Yes, and you got to pay more for it. So I mentioned earlier that you get core vulnerability management. There's an add-on to vulnerability management that is like a premium add-on management. And yes, that will do some automated remediation for you if you have Intune. You can actually go to a remediation section if you have it and hit request remediation and set a time for it and everything, and it'll remediate most things. Now, if it's like an application that needs updated, like Adobe, you're still going to have to package that and manually take care of that yourself via Intune. But if it's something like it's missing a patch or something, it'll use Windows Update. It'll utilize what it has access to fix what it can, if that helps.
And then this looks like the last one here. once once the device groups the device groups for EDR, AIR, do you suggest having different groups based on tags such as admin, server, regular user, etc.?
I do, only because I think it's cleaner for reporting. I think it's cleaner to manage in the XDR if you tag, because you can use those tags as filter. And I'll make mention of this later on. If you are going to use Defender for Cloud Apps, the tagging within Defender for Endpoint is the only way you're going to be able to do exclusions from Defender for Cloud Apps, because you have to do an exclusion for not one, but two levels. And those tags become very important. There's some limitations on the tags, on the attributes of what you can do, but yes, you can do operating system type. You can do operating system platform. That'll help you keep it organized. And those tags are used to pull into the automation. So the automated Defender groups that you query to pull machines in, those tags are completely queryable. So you can pull those all in. Oh yeah, attack surface reduction. The reason why I didn't mention attack surface reduction is because it's not actually part of the XDR. It's not actually handled by anything in the XDR. Attack surface reduction is just a set of Microsoft curated vulnerabilities. An example that I use all the time, and there's probably a few folks in here I've definitely talked to about this, but you want to make sure that when you're rolling out attack surface reduction, you do that in audit, because it could take down production applications very quickly and cause you to be in a world of hurt very fast. There is a report on that to manage and look through. Attack surface reduction is going to add a layer on top of the XDR. So in addition to your antivirus protection and your XDR protection, think of the attack surface reduction as another layer that goes on top of that. It's very specific parameters, and the kind of things that I run into where you need exclusions for that kind of thing are like Rapid7, other RMMs, things like Ninja RMM. I've had to do. There's been like a couple other things that I've done in the past. That Rapid7 is another one. If you're doing vulnerability management through Rapid7, then usually it has access to core Windows files, and that's what Defender doesn't like about it. So you usually have to have an attack surface reduction, because it thinks it's trying to impersonate a tool set. So again, there's very deliberate things in terms of attack surface reduction to keep macro enabled attacks out, child services out, creation out, and other targeted areas out as a layer on top of the XDR. Does that help? I know that was brief, but that was attack surface reduction in a nutshell. Does that help with the question?
I hope so. We don't have anything more after that. And he said yes, so that helped. But it looks like that is all the questions we have. So again, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll be sending this out. And please reach out to your account rep if you want to get in front of Derek.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Everybody have a good day.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.